I'm Dana Walsh, and I'm running for Congress in Congressional District 8. My main opponent is Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. This is part 2 of 3 segments where I am talking to Don Campbell, my financial advisor on my campaign. And the first segment, we addressed what really happened in this financial meltdown. And in this segment, I'd like to talk to him about how did it happen. So what I'd like to do is introduce him again, or I will have Don introduce himself, and then I have some very interesting questions for him. So Don, tell us a little about your background.
Well, thanks, Dana. I have a master's degree in business administration from right here in the Bay Area, Stanford University. And then for 40 years, I've been involved in business finance as an investor, as a corporate executive, as a corporate director, and in the United States and in other countries around the world.
Great. So Don, again, I understand living in a city like San Francisco when people thought this was my last chance to get a house. I understand how people would take a loan like that, how they would think they could make the payments because someone else did. But how did the people who were giving these loans, how did they ever think that these people were going to repay the loans? They are the financial geniuses. What were they thinking?
Oh, that is the question, and you know there's lots of answers. One of the early answers is a lot of the people that were talking to the borrowers were not making the loans. You got to remember now we're dealing with a bunch of intermediaries. So, for example, they were loan brokers. The banks that made the worst loans bought them through a broker. So this is a person, remember, that gets paid if a loan is made. Doesn't matter if it's a good loan or a bad loan, they get paid when it's made. So you had a whole industry of loan brokers out there talking to people, telling them, don't worry, go into this. You know, if you don't make the payments, the house price is going to go up. You can sell it at a profit.
That sounds
or
familiar.
Refinance the loan. Exactly. And even the banks were intermediaries. And that gets back to, we talked a little bit about how Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, these quasi-government agencies, got involved because they would buy these loans from the bank. So even the bank would say, well, I make the loan, I take a percentage, I sell it off to them. So I'm not taking any risk. Even if I think it's a bad loan, why not make it? It's the other guy that's got to worry about it. So you have people like that, the whole system began built like that. And when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had enough of their stuff, the investment bankers got in. And they said, wow, we can package these bad mortgages. We can package them together and sell them to investors.
Was there just too much in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? Why would they be sold off to Wall Street?
Well, but you're talking about San Francisco.
Okay.
And house prices are pretty high here, aren't they? And you know, through all that period, Fannie and Freddie could only guarantee loans up to, what was it, $276,000?
Yeah.
So what does that do for you when you got $1 million house?
Right.
So those loans were made outside of the Fannie-Freddie area.
Okay.
So Fannie and Freddie have a lot of problem loans out in Fresno and Bakersfield. They don't have so many here because how many people could buy a house here with a $276,000 mortgage?
Got it. But didn't they just raise that?
They just raised it. Now I want to talk about how the government helps to increase the risk in the system. Yes, they did. They more than doubled that, so more and more expensive houses are being guaranteed by the federal government.
Right.
But now you see, you have people who were making money whether the loan was ever good or bad because they weren't keeping the loans. They were making the loans and passing them off to somebody else.
Now the guarantees, the loans they were making that were guaranteed, which is why the next investor wanted them, the guarantees were from Fannie and Freddie?
Well, on those loans up to that level, yes. Okay. Fannie and Freddie would either buy the loan themselves, and they bought a lot of loans, or they would guarantee them so somebody else would buy them. Okay. And then when that wasn't enough, then Wall Street got involved and took off with this and started packaging the loans. So again, somebody else would buy them. Now, why would somebody buy a package of subprime mortgage loans? i.e., loans made on overpriced houses to people who had very little income and no history of making payments on anything. Well, the answer was rating agencies got involved and they put ratings on these bonds and said these are AAA bonds. they're as good as the federal government's bonds. And so people were buying them.
Now let's go back to the Fannie and Freddie connection. They are regulated. Fannie and Freddie were regulated. And I'm sure we've all seen these tapes of the regulators in Congress telling them this had to stop, that rules were being broken, that shady things were going on. Were they just blown off? Were they ignored? Why would you have regulators if they do not have the power to stop these policies?
Well, there's the political interference, of course, because politicians, weren't making the loans or guaranteeing. It wasn't their money, but they certainly could represent constituents who wanted to buy a house. So no question they could push Fannie and Freddie to continue to do business, even when it wasn't prudent. But again, remember we talked about what's an appropriate loan for a lender, and that's back again to the capitalization of Fannie and Freddie. Mm-hmm. They had very little capital to support all the loans they were making. Why could they raise all this capital to make those loans? It was because the federal government had an expected guarantee of those loans. Mm-hmm. So Fannie and Freddie could borrow using the credit of the United States government to make loans that otherwise people would not give them the money to do.
Well, would this be a reason that Wall Street picked them up, is because they knew they were guaranteed? Or is that not the case?
Well, Wall Street would pick them up if they could get rating agencies to put ratings on bonds so they could sell them. So the bonds that were guaranteed by Fannie and Freddie, that's those mortgages, that's one thing. The others was done by the rating agencies. So you had a system that began to get put in place that allowed you to create and sell mortgages. So that if you were in a bank or in an investment bank, you were part of creating these, but you weren't planning to keep them. You were going to lay them off on other people.
But no, I don't think of Wall Street being run by people who would pick up bad loans. So help me understand that.
Oh, they picked up a lot of them. What they often did, was they would take a package of these mortgages, and to get a AAA rating on some of the bonds that were secured by the mortgages, they had to create other bonds against the same mortgages that were junior to those.
Right.
That came before them, that would lose the first money.
Right, but then, and we talked about that in the last segment.
That's right.
How did they think that that was going to continue as the 10% failed, and then it started affecting the 90%, or did it?
Well, it didn't while they were still doing it. Mm-hmm. Again, this is, now you say, why would the people doing this, the people running these banks that are now bankrupt, by the way, that have lost everything for their investors, why would they do that? Well, it was very much in their interest to do it because they were getting a lot of big bonuses. So you have the greed factor there that came into Wall Street, no question about that. But you also had a cadre of people supporting them who were making analyses that looked backwards and said, well, look, this is going to go on forever.
But again, doesn't the top management of a company like that, they're supposed to have the judgment, they're supposed to have the financial expertise to, when these models are looking backwards, to say, looking forward, this cannot continue. So I think one of the things you bring up is how many people got paid on this. I think what affects and offends the American public so much is that many of the people who put these things together are the ones that actually got out with their money, where the investors took the hit. And those investors could be anything from a pension fund to an individual's IRA. The guys that put this stuff together, I shouldn't be sexist, the guys and women who put these things together, they walked off with their money and they're not being held accountable. How does Congress, how does the financial world, how do they explain that to the American public? Because it's affected probably everyone in the country.
Well, you can't, there's no good explanation for that. There's no justification for it.